through this land of ours and fill a sportsman's dreams. Enjoy what nature holds for us, her bounty never ends. Getting back to basics with the practical sportsman. It's always an adventure, no matter where we go. From a favorite hunting spot to the hottest fishing hole. Outdoor life we all can share with family and friends. We'll do it all together with a practical sportsman. We'll do it all together with a practical sportsman.
Hi there, come on in. It is Thursday night, the 27th of February, the year 2003. Zachary, we have some video tonight of a guy named Richard English. You don't really see him because he's behind the camera, but he is giving us a tour of the deer that he raises down in Ohio. He's the guy who got Bill Yoder going on taking deer around on tour, and he has a fascinating story about antlers, and they're falling off right now at this time of year for those big bucks.
Cool.
Yes, indeed, cool. And we have a cool guide report and a lot more coming up. Stay tuned. I'm Fred Trost.
And I'm Zachary Trost, and you're watching The Practical Sportsman.
Getting ready to load this buck. We'll just see how hard these antlers are on.
Dateline Harrison Township. A new bacterial disease has been found in Lake St. Clair muskies. The disease is called Pisarictesia and was first identified in farm salmon in Chile in 1989. Symptoms include the appearance of small white lesions on the skin, and the disease can damage a fish's kidney and spleen. The fish disease is not believed to be harmful to humans. However, more research is needed to discover the effects that it has on fish. An article by Chuck Stafford delves into the topic of problems with walleye numbers in Saginaw Bay. Walleye pro Mark Sack is among a number of anglers that is concerned with walleye numbers in Saginaw Bay. We have concerns about a bunch of guys coming in and really clobbering them in the spring when they're running upstream just before spawning. However, DNR fisheries biologist Jim Baker states, our surveys indicate that the population is pretty stable, but we have seen that fishing effort has dropped off to some extent. And he adds that some of the fall off is due to low lake levels. Harvest rates for walleye in Saginaw Bay and the Saginaw River over the past 3 years are as follows. In 1999, 55,526 walleye were harvested. In 2000, 95,427, and in 2001, 89,754. Well, Baker added, I don't see a trend here. I'm thinking that the population is still running about where it has been running for the last several years. And beyond Michigan, well, last week I reported on coyotes being a problem, and on page 9 of the current issue of the Michigan Outdoor News, there was a blurb Dateline Greenwich, Connecticut. Sports commentator Frank Gifford and his wife, TV personality Kathy Lee Gifford, told the Greenwich Time, the coyote basically came up on our back patio and dragged our dog off onto the ice field and dropped it. Well, Gifford says his family will be much more cautious about letting their dogs out as the coyote killed their 15-year-old Bichon last month. Greenwich police say coyotes are responsible for killing 2 dogs since December and are the likely culprits for 4 other attacks. Dateline Chicago, Illinois. Well, the driver of a seafood delivery truck is lucky to be alive after discovering the vehicle he was operating had no brakes. Homeland terrorists involved with the Animal Liberation Front have taken credit for damaging the brakes and refrigeration systems on this and a fleet of other seafood delivery trucks in Chicago. Brake lines were cut on 48 trucks, and terrorists wrote ALF, no brakes, on a bay door of a company building. The Chicago Tribune reports of receiving an anonymous email in which ALF members claim the responsibility for the act, and the FBI is investigating this as a possible act of domestic terrorism, according to Ross Rice, spokesman for the FBI in Chicago. Well, this and other news for Michigan sportsmen can be found every other week on the newsstand or by subscription in the Michigan Outdoor News.
Last week in our series on recreational trespass, we learned that the legislature doesn't care what kind of recreation you're pursuing. They wrote the Recreational Trespass Act to say, in part, a person shall not enter or remain on the property of another person to engage in any recreational activity or trapping on that property without the consent of the landowner. It doesn't matter whether you're tearing up the dirt on a loud motorcycle with knobby tires or you're wearing moccasins and sneaking around chasing butterflies. The law says you need permission to go on someone else's land or else you're violating the act. But let's look a little closer at one part of this statement where it says you can't enter or remain on the property. I mean, what's that about? In order to remain, you would have to have entered, right? So why the difference? Well, the answer is that under certain conditions, it might not be against the law to enter someone's property for recreation, but if they tell you to leave, you must leave or you'll be violating the act. So let's just make sure that you understand this principle. Just say you had permission to be on somebody's land, but the next time you went there, they told you that your permission was revoked. You had to get off the property. At that point, you would have to leave. Or say that you had been crossing somebody's property, say on a snowmobile. You've done this year after year for 10 years, every winter, and the landowner had never kicked you off. Well, the first time he comes out and tells you to leave, you have to leave. That's where remaining on property without consent comes into play. And from there on, you can no longer enter because you've been told that you don't have consent. But other than, somebody's property where you've been kicked off, when would it be illegal to enter someone's property under the Recreational Trespass Act? I mean, land that you've never been on before, that you've never talked to the landowner? Well, we'll talk about that land that you don't know about next week.
The county seat of the featured county in this week's Fish and Game Hall of Fame is Cassopolis. Well, can you name the county? It's pretty easy. It's Cass County, right down here in the southwest corner of the Lower Peninsula. Bordering Indiana, this area was originally inhabited by the Potawatomi Indians, and European settlers moved there in the 1820s. The Indian Trail that ran across the southern part of the county later became U.S. Highway 12. And until the interstate system was built, US 12 was the main road from Chicago to Detroit. Cass County was named after Lewis Cass, the second governor of the Michigan Territory, who was also the Secretary of War under President Andrew Jackson. During the Civil War, Cass County was the location for the Underground Railroad, and Quakers helped many black slaves settle in the area. The William Jones House, just outside of Cassopolis, was a happy end of the line to many slaves. Cass County has over 250 lakes and several nature preserves, which makes it a great outdoor county. In years past, Fred has done several waterfowl hunts on Cass County lakes and ponds. It's a good area for ducks and geese because of the agriculture and the wetlands. Well, now let's take a look at some of the big fish and game that came from Cass County. The next county we'll be featuring on the Fish and Game Hall of Fame will be Macomb County.
Fred Wasco from Saginaw fishing the Tittabawassee River, got a walleye 30 inches long that wasn't worth getting mounted.
Well, not that one. I said only once in a lifetime, one fish, so I waited.
But this king salmon here, 42 inches, 30 pounds. Look at this baby. Who mounted this?
Bob Nancaro out of Vassar, Michigan.
Yeah.
This is the hard part of a coffee table.
Wow. This is great. And your boat, of course, you're Fred Wasco, and your boat is?
The Floatin' Freddy, and we caught this up at Frankfort, Michigan.
Wow. You know the cool thing? This is really interesting. Let's do a little question of law here. On this mount here, there are these little shells that I think are freshwater mussel shells.
I have no idea.
Could be.
Oh, that's a good answer. Because they're illegal to pick up and have. Did you know that?
The guy gave them to me.
Oh, you think that gets you off?
Today, hopefully.
The guy gave them to me. Well, no, that is interesting. Of course, who knows where they came from, but they have all kinds of things you're not allowed to pick up, and that's one of them. So you're probably going to get busted on this, Fred.
Well, I'd appreciate that.
You know where we get a good lawyer?
Yeah, I do, as a matter of fact. Well, anyway, were you on this trip?
I netted it.
Well, aren't you the man? A 30-pounder. You ever netted a 30-pounder before?
Nope, first one. And then we put a 28-pounder right behind it.
Wow. That is awesome. A great day. You're going back to Frankfurt this year, I bet.
Absolutely.
Well, good. Congratulations, Fred. That is a great mount. Way to go.
We've got a recipe called maple rabbit. Basically because the maple syrup is the main ingredient other than rabbit in here. And you're going to, of course, take your rabbit pieces and then just going to fry them.
Boy, look at the meat that is on rabbit.
Yeah, there really is. This is really a meaty rabbit.
It isn't like, the chicken you sometimes buy or get the fried chicken that they
Right.
sell that has little teeny nothing on the bone.
Got a lot of big bones and no meat. And just want to fry these and no flour or anything else in this.
No, just in oil?
Right, exactly. And then going to put those in a casserole dish, put the rabbit in a casserole dish, and then make a sauce. It's got onions and a little bit of vinegar and some Worcestershire sauce.
Very good. You did good on that.
I'm getting there. A little bit of chili pepper, or chili powder. Now this you could add more if you wanted to add more or less, and salt and pepper. And then of course your maple syrup. And I thought that this would be too sweet for this recipe, but it really isn't. And then just let this cook down a little bit and then put it over the rabbit.
That all goes into a sauce.
Right.
Put it over the rabbit.
And then bake
just
it.
Bake it?
Right.
Of course, you just browned the rabbit and
Exactly.
didn't cook it all the way through.
Exactly.
We ought to try this out on our cameraman director, John Ford. He likes wild game. Let's see how he likes his rabbit.
This is actually pretty good, pretty doggone good. However you cook this, I'm not sure, Kath, but it flakes right off the bone. And I've had to wrestle with rabbits before, trying to free them up off the bone. But this is just about good enough to make me give up chicken.
Yeah,
I think.
it is. It's tender.
It is extremely tender.
The sauce was really, really good on this. When I heard or saw the maple syrup in it, I thought it was going to overpower everything, but it doesn't.
Oh, no. I suppose if you don't have maple syrup, good old Aunt Jemima. Mm-hmm. Something like that.
I'm sure you could.
And you put some chili pepper in here, or what?
There's a little bit of everything in here, actually. There's some onions.
I'd like it even a little spicier.
Would you?
Spicy?
Oh, yeah. I like spicy.
A lot of people would like it this way, though, this mild.
Very tasty.
And it's really so hard to describe what rabbit tastes like.
Oh,
I mean,
yeah,
it really
it's
doesn't have
taste like pheasant, doesn't taste like chicken.
but it doesn't have a terribly distinctive, weird flavor either.
No, but it's awesome.
Awesome.
Here in the museum, we have a variety of exhibits that display antlers. We have big game mounts ranging from red stag to moose to caribou to deer. We also have an unusual display of Jose's antlers. He was a pet deer owned for 16 years by Lou and Doris Pittman from Brooklyn. These antlers that are around Jose are the ones that he shed during his lifetime each year. They're mounted on boards so you can compare the growth and changes from year to year. Now, a fellow named Richard English from Ohio takes live deer around in a traveling show. Richard made a tape for us about deer at the end of February. I mean, right now, the same time when the deer in Michigan are losing their antlers. It's very interesting.
I'm going to talk about antler growth here a little bit. Now, this is a buck. This is February 26th. Still has his antler. Very aggressive. Ears down. This is what you watch for in an attack from a deer. Now, he's due to drop his rack just any time, but he was out there playing with a big log, and they seem to be on pretty solid. I just had 2 bucks drop, so we're going to take a look at them here in a minute. He's wanting to come up and get me. You always want to stand by a good solid post so he can't hit you square. Ears down, stiff-legged, ready to get you. Sometimes I can talk him down though. How you doing, bud? Yeah. You mad about something? Is you mad? Them antlers on pretty good yet, ain't they? Yeah. Most all deer will drop their racks within 3 days every year at the same time, and every buck is on his own schedule. He may be 3 weeks difference from the next deer, but that's his schedule. This is his second rack. Last year he was about an 8-pointer, now he's 13. He's broke a couple off there and there, so I expect him to come back even bigger this year. But a great deer. Now this is Thunder's rack. I'll show you Thunder here in just a minute. This just fell off half-hour ago. As you can see, it clears the head so quickly it doesn't even get blood on it. Now after that drops, within 30 days, sometimes 3 weeks, the new rack's coming out of the head. And a rack this size here with the mass will grow about 1 inch to 1.5 inches a day, 160 days. There are 4 main blood vessels that feed this, 1 up the center and 3 on the outside. When they rub that velvet off, they eat the velvet. It's all protein, so it all has to return to their system, so they eat all the velvet. Now we'll go ahead and take a look at Thunder. These, by the way, weigh about 3.5 pounds apiece. This deer always scored 175 inches as an 8-pointer, which is very rare. You see the kind of hole it's left in their head after that antler falls off. Normally about 3 drops of blood comes down the side of the head and then immediately heals up. Now the size of that hole this year is how big the rack's going to be coming out next year. So you can see he's going to be a monster. This deer is 8 years old. I get big racks for 13 years. A whitetail has 3 times more hair per square inch in the summer than he does the winter. And that's to protect him against insects. Your so-called Lyme disease deer tick is nothing more than a black-footed tick. It gets on a rabbit, squirrel, and a mouse. You can get Lyme disease in a city park having a picnic where there aren't any deer. Every time they talk about Lyme disease, they show deer. You know, it originally came off of a mouse to start with. You should worry more about a mouse in your house than a deer in the woods. There's some bit of pain that they go through right after that drops. They'll stand and twist their head, and it's obviously the cold air hitting that open spot, which is an extremely large open spot. He dropped both sides at the exact same time. Now here's Skippy. He dropped, about a month ago. I'll try to get him up close here. And he's out of his head about 1 inch now, so it don't take long. And I get big racks for 13 years, not 4 and 5. You know, they say a deer goes downhill at 4, 5, or 6. You know, who's seen the deer when he was 2? Who's seen him when he was 3, 4, 5, and 6? You don't see the same deer every year. You might a couple times, but not to determine that he's going downhill. And a deer in the wild, you know, up here in Michigan where you have a lot of big snows, he could have not ate good, you know. The body grabs the energy first, what's left goes to antler. If that deer's body gets depleted through a bad winter, when the antler time growing starts, his body's going to grab the energy first. What's left will go to antler. Now he's going to have a lesser rack that year because his body needed it to stay alive. The body grabs what it needs first, the rest goes to antler. And genetics is #1. If you don't have good deer to grow, you're not going to have a big rack. A doe's worth 50% of how a buck fawn turns out. Genetics number 1, age is number 2. If a deer isn't 4.5 years old, he isn't going to have a big rack. You know, there's so many of them killed 1.5 years, 2.5. Ain't had time to grow nothing. If you're not going to mount a 6-inch bass, don't mount a 6-point buck. You got too many does anyhow. Everybody does. Take out some of the does. I hunt for meat as much as I hunt for a nice antler.
Richard English has more footage on his deer that we'll take a look at in 2 weeks.
Well, so stop out and see us, and get outdoors. It's a great place to be. We'll see you next week.